This is the first in a series of videos examining topics related to creative process and its application to art and art criticism. I like to kick off this series by talking about the ways in which we define and evaluate art. People have argued about what art actually is for about as long as, art has existed. Opinions on this matter often clash. It's important to account for these differences when talking about art, because if two people can't even agree on how to define the word, their discussions about it are not likely to be very fruitful. It can be difficult to understand other people's viewpoints without the ability to place their opinions in the context of their overall value system. So let's talk about the ways in which these value systems come to be in the first place. The way I see it, there are two main approaches to evaluating works. I'm calling these the prescriptivist and observationalist approaches. In the prescriptivist approach, a work is compared against a set of pre-existing criteria. The degree to which these criteria are met corresponds to the value of the work. An easy way to think of this is to imagine somebody reading a book or watching a movie with a clipboard in their hand marking off a checklist as they go. These values can come from all kinds of sources: teachers, friends, critics, or even yourself. The observationalist approach is more analogous to a scientific process. A scientist makes observations and then devises schemas to explain these observations to the best of their ability. The validity of these schemas can then be tested by seeing how well they predict future observations. In an artistic application, observations are made by experiencing works of art and examining your reactions to them. By recognizing patterns across a large body of reactions, you can devise schemas that will explain why exactly you do or don't like certain things. Just as with science, of course, these schemas can always be revised to accommodate for new, unexpected observations. This approach is essentially the inverse of prescriptivism. Whereas in prescriptivism, you derive your opinions from a set of values. In observationalism, you derive your values from a set of opinions. I much prefer observationalism to prescriptivism. Prescriptivism to me seems flawed because it's inflexible and doesn't really allow for an individual work to take you by surprise or to influence your value system in any way. It requires people to do complicated mental gymnastics in order to maintain parity between their personal, honest reactions and the prescribed values that they've adopted. It also reduces the viewer essentially to a rubber stamp, a middleman who facilitates judgment but does not actually judge. Prescriptivism asks the viewer to check their critical thinking skills and personal agency at the door, in favor of classifying works using predefined rubrics, as if they were grading a standardized test essay. Since observationalism is based on personal observation, the only example I can really give of the process is my own. My current working definition of art, the model that does the best job of describing my observations, is that art is a method of communicating through creativity. This definition is broad enough to be able to include, say, landscape paintings or surrealist paintings. One communicates relatively literal aesthetic qualities of a place. The others can communicate a more vague mood or feeling. If we look at another medium like music, for example, we find that it can also convey moods, as well as specific melodic, harmonic, rhythmic, or timbral ideas. The definition's mandate of creativity is an important one, as without it we'd have to classify all forms of communication as art, including things like news broadcasts or instruction manuals. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, discussions about art are difficult to have if you assume that everyone else's values are the same as yours. My purpose in providing my own values here is to provide context for further videos in this series. When discussing aspects of the creative process, or when judging creative works, the fundamental assumption I'm going to be making is that the goal of an artist is and should be to communicate as clearly and forcefully as possible.